Hello YouTube, Tyler here of In Fear I Thrive. It is Christmas Eve 2017 and I just wanted to share with you my late 2017 audio production PC build. This is a budget build recommended for people that are mainly recording guitars and bass and using Superior Drummer or whatever sample library you want to use for drums. Definitely not going to be enough for those of you using orchestral samples, using VSTs on every single track. You're definitely going to need something a bit more powerful. But for solo guitarists like myself, this build works just fine. And for US customers, this is going to be under $1,000. I'm Canadian, so this ran me about $1,500, which wouldn't really fit into the budget category. But to US standards, definitely would be a budget build. I'm just going to clarify before I get started that I'm not a professional. This is my first ever PC build, so don't take my advice as professional advice. I'm just sharing with you my build. And if you want to go ahead and build it yourself, feel free to do that, but I can't guarantee that it's going to work for your needs. So anyways, I'll start off with the CPU. I went with AMD Ryzen 5 1400. This is a 3.2 gigahertz quad-core 8-thread processor. I have it overclocked to 3.7 gigahertz. It has more headroom than that, but I found that it was getting way too hot and the fans were running too loud. And for audio production, that's obviously not ideal, so 3.7 gigahertz was kind of the sweet spot for me. I know most people are going with Intel for audio production builds, but I personally have a lot of hope for AMD. They've really stepped it up with these Ryzen processors. So I think that in the future they might possibly outperform Intel. The only downside is that they don't have Thunderbolt support. So if you do have a Thunderbolt audio interface or plan on getting one in the future, you're definitely going to want to go with an Intel processor. But if you are fine with USB audio interfaces like myself, the Ryzen is going to work just fine for you. So next up is the motherboard. It's a Gigabyte AB350M Gaming. This is a micro ATX motherboard. I personally like the smaller form factor. If you would prefer something bigger, there is a full ATX version of this board for not much more money. So it's totally up to you which form factor you want to get. In terms of features, this has the DDR4 2400. It supports Crossfire, which probably isn't going to be a big deal if you're only into audio production. And it also, the second slot only has a PCIe by 4 slot, so the Crossfire is kind of useless on it anyways. But yeah, for my purposes, this board is just fine. And it has M.2 as well, if you want to get an M.2 SSD. I didn't get one in this build, just because it's budget, but if you do have the extra budget, you could go with an M.2 SSD. And next up, RAM. I went with Corsair Vengeance LPX DDR4 2400, that is. This is the Ryzen certified version. So this is just guaranteed compatibility with Ryzen. The regular LPX actually is compatible with Ryzen, but I just got this for peace of mind. It right out of the box is running at 2400 megahertz. You might have to do some tweaking if you don't get the Ryzen certified memory, so just keep that in mind. And yeah, this is 16 gigabytes. I think that's a sweet spot for audio production. If you don't use any samples, you can probably get away with 8 gigabytes, but for most people, 16 gigabytes is probably the best option. Next up is the GPU. This is an ASUS GTX 1050 Ti Phoenix Fan Edition. This is kind of a lower end graphics card. For audio production, this is going to be just fine, even overkill in most situations. But I do a little bit of gaming and video editing, so I needed a half-decent GPU to handle those tasks. If you don't do any gaming, then you can probably get away with a cheaper fanless card, and that will cut down on your noise. And if you plan on doing like 4K video editing or a lot of gaming, then you're going to want a better graphics card than this. But for most people, this is going to be just fine. Power supply, I just went with an EVGA 550B3. This is a modular power supply, 80 plus bronze rating. This you can probably get away with less power for this build. I just wanted to have plenty of headroom in case I wanted to upgrade my GPU in the future. But this part is totally up to you. You can get a cheaper power supply if you want to. And for my SSD, I went with a 250 gig Samsung 850 EVO. This is a little bit overkill for a budget build, I would say, but I wanted to get something quality for my boot drive. But there are options from SanDisk that are a lot cheaper than this. But I personally prefer reliability when it comes to hard drives. But once again, this part is totally up to you. You don't have to get this model. And I don't have the boxes for my hard drives, but I have two 1 terabyte Seagate Barracuda drives. I use one for my data and audio files, video as well. And then the second one is just for my Superior Drummer libraries. I find when you have them on separate drives, it really improves performance, but that's totally optional. It's not mandatory to have separate hard drives for samples and audio, but I do recommend it for sure. And I have a few optional parts here that you definitely don't have to include in the build. I have a few Corsair AF120 fans. These are purple RGB fans. They just make your build look a lot cooler. I'm a sucker for pretty lights, but the case I bought, which I'll show you in a minute, comes with two 120mm fans already, and they're probably quieter than these, so they might be better if you don't care about looks. And I don't have the box here, but there's also a Cooler Master Hyper 212 LED CPU cooler. The Ryzen 5 1400 comes with an AMD the Wraith Stealth cooler, which is pretty small. If you want to do any overclocking, I would definitely recommend upgrading the CPU cooler. There are tons of options for AM4 right now. You don't have to get the Hyper 212. There's also the Arctic Freezer 33 and the Thermaltake Contact Silent 12 that are compatible with AM4 right out of the box. And there are some from Noctua as well, but I don't have the models right on the top of my head at the moment. So now I'll show you the finished product and the case. So I have the build in a Fractal Define Mini C micro ATX case. This is supposed to be a silent case, but unfortunately it is not all that silent, but definitely better than some other cases I have used. But there are other options from Be Quiet and a couple other brands that I can't think of at this moment. But this one was just what was available at my local PC shop. And then here's what it looks like inside. Hopefully you can see that. It's pretty low lighting. Probably should have pulled this out, but I'm too lazy. So got a little bit of RGB action going on in there, but not as much as a lot of PC builders. I didn't want to spend a whole bunch of money on RGB lighting controllers. This looks good enough for me. Alright, so that sums up my 2017 audio PC build. Hope you found this helpful. I'll probably provide links in the description to the parts list. I'll probably include US prices since there are more US viewers than Canadian viewers. But obviously, Canadian viewers can look up their local prices. So let me know in the comments section if you found this helpful, and also let me know if you actually put this build together. It'd be pretty cool if my first ever PC build was something that other people thought would work for them. Thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe and watch my other playthrough videos. I will put links somewhere in this general vicinity to my guitar playthrough videos. Synesthesia was produced entirely on this PC. Resilience was on my previous system, and that was actually why I decided to upgrade, because that project was a little bit, what's the word? Too much for my previous 5-year-old laptop. So this system is definitely a huge step up. Once again, thanks for watching, and Merry Christmas.